Grip 6 manufactures amazing belts, wallets, and wool socks. And did you know they have unlimited replacements for life? Check out their chess-themed merchandise at grip6.com/chess and use code CHESS20 for 20% off your next order.
Hey everybody, it's Grandmaster Ben Finegold here again with the game of the day. We had a tough time deciding what the game of the day would be because it could have been more than one. And we decided to choose the tournament leaders game with Wang. So let's get right into it. This is from round 12 of the candidates. And Jan, who is half a point ahead of Geary, who's half a point ahead of Fabi, he decided to play it safe this game. He played the Petrov. I don't know if I remember Jan playing the Petrov, but all right, gotta play something. So Jan decided not to go all out for a win with black and just play solid. And in my opinion, this is not the strength of either player to play like boring solid chess. They both like to spice it up. And they did spice it up, but they waited a long time. So, all right. Now in the Petrov, d4 was the main move forever. Then about 30 years ago, people started playing knight c3, and probably that's more common now. And Wang Hao probably thought, Jan doesn't play the Petrov, so I'll play something a little unusual and he won't know that. He'll know d4 and knight c3 because he'll be booked up for that, but he won't know d3 because that's not as common. And it turned out Jan did know d3. So this is actually funny. In this position would normally occur in an exchange French. And I've had white in this position, the exchange French many times. And I always play c4, which is explosive. And he played bishop d3, bishop d6. And this is, sort of a boring equal line. And either side can try to win, just that it's not easy. And Wang played queen e2 check. And super GMs either play queen e7 or bishop e6. They're both good. Jan chose queen e7. And in this position, a lot of people like to castle and don't move their king in the opening. So they would just automatically capture with the bishop, which is okay. But capturing with a king, I think, is better. And that's more common because bishop on d6 is better than e7. We have an open file here. We don't want a bishop on it. And we want the rook to go to the open file and the king can safely go to f8. So I prefer king takes e7. And when the queens are off and the position is sort of blocked, it's not too bad to have your king out. Okay, and this position, black can play rook e8 and king f8 or knight c6, which is what he played. And the idea of knight c6 is to play knight b4, and white has to give his bishop away and possibly double his pawns. So normally they play rook e1 check, and black has to decide, do I block or do I move my king? And Wang Hao played a novelty here, c3, stopping knight b4, and it's similar, but okay, now black has time to play either h6, stopping bishop g5, or rook e8 and king f8. Now, the good news is, after rook e1 check, which he didn't play, he played knight h4. After rook e1 check, I can play bishop e6, and you can't play knight g5 anymore, and you can't play bishop g5, so white doesn't really have a good move to increase his, attack on the black king, because there isn't really an attack. So that's why he played h6. He stops everything. Now, if I was white, I would be playing rook e1 check every move. The rook's better on e1. It gains a tempo. But Wang Hao played knight h4 because he wants the two bishops. He wants to go here and get that bishop. Unfortunately, white's wasting a lot of time. 1, 2, 3, and black hasn't moved his bishop. So there's compensation for black. He has a lead in development, and the bishops, I like having two bishops, but I'm not the most happy with this bishop. It can't go here, it can't go here, it can't go here. So bishop's not very good. Okay, so Jan's like, okay, you have two bishops if you want, fine. And, black has everything. All the pieces are out, open file, king is good, and white obviously is not developed, but he has the two bishops, and there's not really an aggressive plan for either side here. So white can probably get developed and think that he's slightly better because of the bishop pair. Okay, so he played g3, and this gives a square for the king, a square for the bishop, and it takes away these squares from black's knight, which actually could have happened because he played knight e7. I would go to d3. h3 is okay. It's not my cup of tea. And now if black plays knight g6, which looks good, then g3 really shows its point. You can't, move your knight anywhere. So Wang came up with a really creative idea, which I like, which is knight c8. He wants to get the knight out of the way, and he wants to put the knight on b6 and possibly go to c4 later. I like this move. Okay, and the game wasn't super interesting until it was. Very equal kind of position. And he played f3, which I don't like, but it's okay. He's stopping the knight from going here, and he wants his king to go here. It's a weakening move, but again, everything is about equal. And that doesn't really change until it changes, when things got interesting. Okay, he wants to have c4 access, and Wang says, no, you can't do anything. Okay, and I would expect two super GMs playing, this would be drawn 90% of the time. It's very equal. It's symmetrical pawn structure. We're going to trade things on the e-file. Either side is good here. Okay, and yeah, now Wang Hao played a little weird. He could just take this, and it's a draw. They just trade everything. But he's playing for a win. That's why he played knight h4 to f5 to get the two bishops, and he wants his two bishops. So he went back here. Now he's not better, but he'd like to win. Jan played rook c8 with the excellent idea of c5. Then the c3 pawn would be backwards if he takes. So that way he has another file for his rook. I like this move too. And I don't really understand bishop d2 very much. I guess he thought this pawn's going to be weak. He was planning on taking that, so it's defended. And his knight has e3 and his rook has the open file. If that was the case, he probably should have played bishop d2 before bishop e3. Again, it's a relatively boring position, so you can move around and it doesn't really cost you much. Okay, c5. Now Jan's playing for the win. Check. And white has the two bishop advantage and the fact that black has an isolated pawn. And black has a very active position and a backward pawn on c3 to hit, and the rook on a1 hasn't moved yet. So again, it's about equal. Bishop b6, opening up for the rook, and the knight can go to c5. Good move. And here, Wang Hao starts a plan which should draw, but he's on the worst side of the draw. I think he had to just chill, just wait, and black probably can't do anything. But he wanted to do something himself. Wang Hao's a very active player. And what he did wasn't that bad, but black was just better. And his idea was to play b4 and open it up, which unfortunately weakens his pawns more. They traded rooks. They traded on a5. And probably Wang Hao thought that he would take on c3 here, which is pretty equal. But Nepomniachtchi played better. He played knight d6 attacking the rook. The knight's much better on d6 than e8. And it's not clear what white should do now. The problem with white's position is and probably Wang Hao thought knight d6 wasn't possible because of rook b3. So he probably thought black's going to take on c3, and the knight's not very good here. My rook is great. But after rook b3 saving the pawn, we have d4. And white's in a lot of trouble. This is not good. So, yeah, the engine really likes black here. And white's pieces don't really make any sense. Nothing's coordinated with anything, and black's pieces are great. Knight d5, and this is hanging, and this is blocked. Everything's great for black. So black has a big advantage here. So probably knight d6 surprised Wang Hao. He kept his rook active with rook a7. The engine thinks rook e7's a little better. And I mean, rook a7's the human move. Problem with rook a7 is if black starts an attack on the here or with the knight, that can't help. the rook on e7, we can help. But he's trying to get his a pawn going. He gains a tempo on the bishop. So rook a7 is still in the drawing zone. Black's obviously better. Bishop d7 is excellent. He wants to trade pieces, making it a draw, because he's clearly worse. These pieces haven't moved in a long time. And it's a little weird opening the 7th rank to your king. This king's much safer. Okay, so they traded. And probably Wang thought this would be a pretty easy draw, especially if they trade the d pawn for the a pawn, which seems likely. Then it's just 3 against 3 and should be a draw. So Jan kept his d pawn, stopping the a pawn. The king can hit the rook. This pawn's better than this pawn because that pawn's being stopped by 2 pieces. So black is very slightly better here. And from this point on, Wang Hao made several little mistakes and he got punished. And up until now, both sides have played very reasonably. And Jan is a little bit better because he played a little bit better. And with perfect play, this should be a draw. White should now do something with these pieces. King f2 or knight e3 or knight d2. Knight d2 doesn't lose to rook c2 because this knight's not defended. Instead, he made a move I don't understand at all. I don't know what he was thinking. Rook e7. If I was white in this position, it was my move, I'd play rook d7. The rook is on everything, and here, these pieces are free now to do what they want. I really dislike this move, and maybe white's lost now. Very strange move. I mean, I want my rook here, not here. Here it can get harassed, and it doesn't stop the rook and the knight and the pawn from moving. Rook c2 check. Now white has a Sophie's choice. King h3. I don't like it. King g1. I don't like it. But you got to play one of them. The engine slightly prefers king g1, but it doesn't like either one. I don't want my king on either square. I feel like I might get mated on either square. King's just totally out of the game here. At least here it's defending the knight. So, okay. d4. And now he plays rook d7. Rook e7, rook d7. In the last 3 moves, white's rook is still here and the king moved back. And black has, done some good stuff. Now, obviously, black doesn't want to trade these 2 pawns. That's probably a draw. So he tries to keep his pawn as long as possible, defends his pawn. And white says, I have counterplay, so I should be okay. So he's pushing his pawn, doing the best he can. And now we're ruining white's pawn structure, or we're going to have a pawn here, which is really annoying. This is another tough choice for white. Taking is terrible. Worst pawns ever. G4, don't want to play that either. Don't want them to play h3. So he's like, all right, let me get my counterplay. Rook a8, h3, and a7. Now, unfortunately, black has a lot of things he can do here, and white has almost nothing to do. White's almost in zugzwang. And he missed his last chance to have good chances to draw in this position. And he made some mistakes in this position also. The only move to have good drawing chances is knight to d2, because the knight's just terrible on f1. Can't take the knight because the rook will move away and I'll queen. So then when you go knight here, the knight has a lot of good squares, and white can get some counterplay. Keeping these pieces here passively, it's not a good idea. g4 is a mistake. And now he played rook b8, giving away this pawn for this pawn, which makes it seem like a likely draw. That's why he played g4. And in this position, if you play rook to d4, I'll play rook a3, defending my pawn. So he attacked the pawn. And he took the pawn, but his position is just terrible. Rook g2, this is weak, these are terrible, this is safe and can move up or hide. And black has a long-term plan of playing rook g2 check, king h1, and trying to get the knight to f2, which is mate. So you got to defend this pawn, stop this mate, activate your knight. You can't do it all. In this position, Wang Hao didn't play the best way because it's really difficult. Maybe an engine could draw, maybe, but probably not. Okay, he played knight g3, finally activating his knight. He can't play king f1 because he loses the h-pawn. King h1's not good. King f8, no checks for you. King is perfectly safe. Attacks the knight, knight b2. So now he wants to play knight here, attacking the rook, and then hopefully play knight f2 mate. And in this position, the engine wants to play knight e4, defending the f2 square. And he decided to stop the knight from getting to f2 by checking and playing here. Now the knight can't go to f2. And unfortunately, that was another mistake. This is definitely losing because he can't defend his f-pawn now. And after rook f2, he did stop Nepomniachtchi from knight f2, but this pawn's going to fall. And then this pawn isn't too good once this pawn falls. The king is terrible. So this is really bad for white. And I was very surprised in this position, white resigned. I thought the game would go another 10, 20 moves. Now, I looked at this position with three engines. One was deep Fritz 14, one was Fritz 17, and they both said black's up 2.1. I mean, I wouldn't resign if I thought it was 2.1. However, Stockfish 13, which is the best engine, said black is +5. Wow. The engines have such a different view of this position. So black is obviously winning. Black's up a pawn. This king is terrible. This pawn is really weak. This is the safest king ever. And you have to watch out for this pawn too. Sometimes black wins that pawn. So I wouldn't resign here, but I think Wang Hao was fed up that he was equal or close to equal the whole game, and then it just all went downhill. And he had enough. 4 decisive games today, and Jan keeps his half-point lead over Giri. Giri won a very nice game against Fabi. And unfortunately for Giri, he has to get more points than Jan if they tie for first, if Jan wins on tie breaks, because Jan beat Giri over a year ago, in round 1, I think it was. And that's the first tie break head-to-head. So I hope you enjoyed that game. Nobody enjoyed it as much as Jan did. And that was round 12. There's 2 rounds remaining, and it's almost a certainty that either Jan or Giri is going to challenge Magnus at the end of the year. And obviously Jan has the big chances because he has more points than Giri, and he beats him on tie breaks. So Giri is going to need 2 out of 2 to have any chance of winning the tournament. This is Grandmaster Finegold for Chess.com, Game of the Day. Please like and subscribe, watch our other videos, and follow live on YouTube and Twitch the Chess.com coverage, which features many grandmasters analyzing the game live at many different camera angles. It's great coverage. It's a great tournament. 4 decisive games today. What else could you ask for on a beautiful weekend? I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.